It has finally happened. Yes, the much anticipated, long awaited meeting between Erik ten Hag and Sir Jim Ratcliffe finally took place at Carrington. But what exactly transpired between the two? Welcome to the United Hotspot. My name is Webb, and you can call it an exclusive, but I'll call it an inside all access story into what exactly transpired when the boss met his boss. My name is Webb, and let's get into it. Now, we all know by now that for the past couple of days, Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his team, led by Sir Dave Brailsford, have been at Manchester United at Old Trafford. First, they spent about 2 hours at Old Trafford, and now, yesterday, that was Wednesday, they were at Carrington, and this was supposed to be an easy, simple formality of a meet and greet. They were meeting players, staff, and everyone, and at the end of it, it was all smiles. But it could have been partly cosmetic because there was a moment for Sir Jim to go into a session between him, Sir Dave Brailsford, and Erik ten Hag. Just the three of them had their moment, and here I am to let you in into the inside story of what they discussed. Now, there was a lot that came, of course, as you'd expect, that was discussed according to close call sources from Old Trafford. I've told you before that if you've got sources in Old Trafford, it is not difficult for news to leak. I think they do it on purpose anyway. But anyway, let me just take you there. So this is what exactly happened. So the two met, and of course, Sir Jim was impressed with what Erik ten Hag has managed to accomplish, especially in his first season. Now, this was him speaking to Erik as a fan, accomplishing good stuff, finishing third in the league for the first time. But of course, Erik explained to him what befell the club after that. How injuries cost them, the things we already know. But there was the core discussion of their meeting was about the future of the club, and Sir Jim made it clear, and this was just part of what should be a longer meeting that will happen later. But this is what was hinted on in that meeting, and it is believed they have scheduled to meet again for a more brutal meeting, most probably before the end of the season. They will meet one more time, this time not for a meet and greet, but for more brutal talk. But this is just what they discussed on the surface. Apparently, Sir Jim made it clear that he wants to first work on a new structure for Manchester United. And Erik ten Hag has got to be let in on this because if you're the manager and you've been doing things a certain way, you've certainly got to know what your new boss wants to do. Are they letting you do things the way you've been doing? And Erik ten Hag explained it clearly to him how he has been dealing with John Mata and Richard Arnold and how they have been supportive, by the way. He commended them for being supportive. But Sir Jim made it clear, together with Dave Brailsford, they made it clear that they do want to change the structure of Manchester United, and the manager has got to buy into whatever they're going to do if they are going to work together. Remember, Erik ten Hag made it clear that they have been communicating with him and they do want to work with him. That there was one point of disparity, whereas the two agree that they do want to change the way things are done and push the club in the same direction. There was one point of disparity, and that might lead to what I'll tell you at the tail end of this video. Now, the point of disparity between the two parties is the structure that Sir Jim and his team are contemplating putting in place for Erik ten Hag to operate under. According to Sir Jim and team, first of all, they do want to bring in a director of football, and not one. They want to form a director of football, but not one. They want to bring in at least two directors of football, experienced guys. So the post you've been hearing, linking Paul Mitchell and Dan Ashworth to Manchester United, perhaps makes sense because it was revealed to Erik that they want to bring in two new directors of football at least, and these guys will have the biggest power when it comes to transfers. Now, Erik ten Hag, knowing him being a man of strong will, a man of character, was not exactly moved by this because knowing how Erik is, he's not, I don't want to use the word arrogant, but I think you can see it in him. If you know how to read people, you can tell that Erik ten Hag has got a certain level of arrogance to him. But of course, it's understandable. If you're manager of Manchester United, you're supposed to have a certain level of arrogance in you if you go to manage such a club. But he's a man who wants to do things his way. He's a Dutchman. Dutchmen, when it comes to football, do want to do things their way. Now, Erik ten Hag is not exactly excited about the whole idea of usurping his powers when it comes to transfers. Now, remember, all the players that Ten Hag has signed have been his players. They have got his name written on them. Andre Onana's name is Erik ten Hag's name is written on Andre Onana, joining Man United from Inter. Erik ten Hag's name is written on David De Gea leaving Manchester United. Erik ten Hag's name is written on Cristiano Ronaldo departing Manchester United. Erik ten Hag's name is written on signing Mason Mount. Erik ten Hag's name is written on signing Sofian Amrabat. Ten Hag's name is written on signing Anthony Dos Santos. Now, if you list all those names, and I may not go into the rest that came on loan, Wout Weghorst and all, Erik Ten Hag, and this is, I think, where the sort of pride and arrogance comes in. I think he feels that he's being judged by a couple of signings that have been wrong, not by the general performance of the team. And this is where I beat the disparity comes in, because Erik Ten Hag feels that, like, generally, I mean, coming in your first season, leading this team to third position shows you a good manager. But then Sir Jim and team feel, yes, you've got signs of a good manager, but you're not good in terms of signing players. And that's a bit oxymoron, because how are you a good manager, yet you're not good at signing players? So this is the point of disparity, and that is where they'll probably go deeper into the talks. But either way, Sir Jim seems to be, again, intent on doing things his way. Of course, this is what they have done with all the successes they have got with Team Sky and in Formula One with Sir Dave Brailsford. So it's obviously the way they want to do things. Now, it will definitely depend on Erik Ten Hag and what exactly he wants for himself. Does he want to fit into this new structure, report to two guys? I remember I was watching a documentary of which coach was it? I think it was a former either Newcastle coach, where they brought in a sporting director and it didn't work for them. Was it Glenn Haddo? I forget who. I read that a couple of years, about 10 or 14 years ago. And this director of football thing and the way it works, some managers don't work well with it, because directors of football might not necessarily understand what the manager wants to do. Now, Erik Ten Hag, knowing the character he is, knowing how he wants to be his own man and run things his way, I'm not surprised that he was not exactly moved by this. But this is exactly the direction that Sir Jim and his team wants to take. So that's the point of disparity. That then, whereas Ten Hag is for a new structure, he does not want the powers over transfers to be taken away from him, because that, in a way, is a vote of no confidence in him. Because, like I said, if you're a manager and you don't have powers over the players you sign, then it means you're not good enough to select your players. But the facts prove it that Erik Ten Hag's signings have struggled, all of them. So do you blame Sir Jim? Do you for trying to change that structure? And it has been a recurring problem at Manchester United. So that is where the two are trapped. But like I said, talks are going to go on, and they will decide on, of course, what exactly to do. But regardless what happened, what transpired in that meeting, what remains clear is that Sir Jim and his team are not in a rush to part ways with Erik Ten Hag. If anything, they seem to have utmost respect and belief in what Erik Ten Hag can do, and judging by what he has done in terms of the general performance of the team, especially in his first season, but also understanding the difficult circumstances under which he has had to operate. So the worst that could happen now is they will see him finish the end of the season. If he doesn't want to work in their new structure, they will see him finish the end of the season and make a decision after that. So for those of you who have been calling for the head of Erik Ten Hag, perhaps you might not be too excited. He's not about to leave, not until the end of the season. But if you do want him to leave, you might want to pray that the next meeting he doesn't change his mind and buy into the whole new direction that Sir Jim and his team wants to take. So that's exactly what we do get from the meeting that transpired between the two. That's the core part of the meeting that I felt you needed to know this early morning, evening, or afternoon, from depending on where you are. So Sir Jim and Erik met. It was a meet and greet with staff and everyone. There was mostly happiness and joy. But when they had their moment of three, the three of them did not seem to be exactly excited about everyone and what exactly they want to do. Erik Ten Hag wants to have a certain level of control. In fact, he still wants to have the biggest control over transfers. Sir Jim and Sir Dave Brailsford are saying, you've had this control, and look where we are. Andrew Onana is still being questioned. Anthony Dos Santos were ripped off 85 million for a player like that. You talk of Sofiane Amrabat. Obviously, Amrabat is not good enough. Sergio Reguilon came on loan. It didn't work. He's being sent back to the sender. You talk about players like Mason Mount has failed to establish himself. He was the first signing for Erik Ten Hag in the summer, and everyone was saying why. So there is a lot that can be questioned about him. But as I said, a man of character and strong will like him will always want to stick to his guns and do things his way. Question is, what then do you do if you're Sir Jim Ratcliffe from this point? If Erik Ten Hag is saying, I still want to control football, stuff in terms of transfers, and Sir Dave is saying, I'm bringing in, Sir Ratcliffe and Sir Dave are saying, we're bringing in two guys, two directors of football. Now, whereas I'm not for two directors of football, that is a case of, too many chefs spoiling the food. I'm for, I think, taking away powers from Erik ten Hag. Yes, you may not have all the powers taken away as a manager. You want to have a say, obviously, and he's going to have a say, but he wants to have the biggest say in the transfers, according to what we get process at Carrington. What exactly do we do moving forward? This is the inside story of Sir Jim and Erik ten Hag's meeting. My name is Webb. Let's wait and see what unfolds going